Hi guys, Andy here. So you may have seen my unboxing a few days ago where I sort of commented that actually this phone was one of the most anticipated phones for me of this latter part of the year. And if you haven't heard of Xiaomi, you might be thinking, what on earth? The Xiaomi what now? But Xiaomi, they're a big company. They're the fifth biggest phone manufacturer in the world. They make drones, they make robot vacuum cleaners, they make laptops, they make all kind of, I mean, they're big. They're kind of a bit like a Samsung. They just don't operate much over in the West, I suppose. And this is their first stock Android phone. I've used quite a few of the Xiaomi devices in the past, and generally the software has been the big deal breaker. It's just not very good. The software they put on it, they try and make it like iOS, which is a bad thing for me in the first place. And it just hadn't seemed that reliable in the past. I remember sort of struggling with notifications. They wouldn't always come through. Some of them don't even come with the Play Store on. But in this instance, we get in stock Android. So I was really quite excited. Let's kick things off by saying it is a budget device, though. Don't get me wrong. It's not going to battle with the Pixel or the Pixel 2 or some of the top-end Samsung devices, because it's cost me about £170. So you've got to sort of, in some ways, set your expectations based on that. But I think with those expectations set, the Xiaomi Mi A1 then stomps all over those expectations, kicks them out the door and says, come on, because it's a really good phone. So let's have a look at the phone. First of all, the design. I think it's a very nice design. It's fairly plain. It's nothing particularly sort of snazzy or special, but I think you can see already the build quality, if the camera will focus. The build quality on that is really very good. It feels very premium. I mean, it's almost, I think you could fool people into saying, you gave this to somebody and say, yeah, it cost me £600. I don't think they were like, get out. You know, it's not inconceivable that it would be an expensive device. There is a slight camera bump on the back, which I don't like camera bumps, but it wasn't particularly noticeable. It didn't really cause any problems. I'm fine with that. The metal body is actually quite grippy, although it feels quite smooth. Wow, you might have seen that as well, how quick the fingerprint sensor is. I brushed my finger over the back, and let's show you. See how I only... it is actually very reliable fingerprint sensor. So I have tested some phones, definitely not as good as this, especially in the budget area. But this one, I mean, that's just a light tap. The device in all is 165 grams, so it's not a lightweight, but at the same time, it certainly doesn't feel heavy or bulky in the hand. There is a headphone jack. There it is. Sorry, at the base of the device. A speaker on the other side, USB Type-C. I'm not sure, someone let me know in the comments if you know what those two little dots either side of the Type-C are. Is that, I can only think it might be something that helps kind of dock. Along the right hand edge, the power button below the volume, which I'd never really thought about. Generally I don't like it. Generally I'm used to the power button being above, but someone else commented the other day that they quite like it there, so fair enough. And then just turn on, we've got capacitive buttons, you see them lightly lit up along the bottom there. You could argue they're the wrong way around. They're kind of the Samsung way around. I don't mind it too much. I quite like the back button being easily reached by my thumb. It comes in black, gold, and rose gold. Taking whatever takes your fancy. The hardware itself, the chipset is a Qualcomm Snapdragon 625, which is their kind of mid-range-ish type chip. I think they do like a 400 series, which is the proper budget. So it's not the proper budget, it's mid. It's got an octa-core 2.0 GHz Cortex A53 CPU, and it's got an Adreno 506 GPU. It's got 4 GB RAM, 64 GB of storage, and it can take a micro SD card slot in the SIM card tray instead of a second SIM card. All of that gives me just over 5100 in Geekbench 3. Which isn't that far off my Pixel XL, which kind of surprised me. You do see some bits of lag, so let's see if it's gonna. Did you see that? It's not totally smooth. It does kind of jitter a little bit. Again, do you see that in the scrolling? That actually seemed a bit quicker then. There, kind of a little odd. And I do notice when I'm going into sort of check emails and things. It sometimes takes, you see that? Oh, that's quite a bad example. It's not normally as bad as that, I would say. But that is kind of, that is where the sort of budget aspect shows itself. What else we got hardware-wise? So the speaker on the bottom is pretty good actually. It's in the top third. It scored an average of 86.7 decibels in my tests.
You say, like, you tell a 4-year-old, oh, you're so dumb. 2 plus 2 is not 5, it's 4, you idiot. No, you say, oh, sweetie, you know, that's so close. Good job. Let's talk about, well, why 2 plus 2 is really 4.
So generally, I mean, I do, the speaker to me is quite important. I like to make phone calls just using the speaker rather than holding it up to my head. And I do listen to a lot of podcasts, so it's quite important that it's of a reasonable volume. And yeah, it's pretty good. I've mentioned the Type-C connector already. Another point for Xiaomi devices and any device you get in from China is checking what bands they cover, as in will it be able to connect to 4G on your particular network. So I'm on EE and it's fine, it connects to 4G no problems, and it does seem to cover most of the UK bands. What it is lacking is wireless charging, I guess because of do you see how those fingerprints kind of faded away then? That's kind of cool, isn't it? What was I saying? Yeah, so there's no wireless charging because of the metal back. There's no NFC, which actually, you know, I do like to use for sort of file transfers and stuff like that, and obviously for Android Pay and other things along those lines. But again, you are at the budget end of things, so it's not particularly surprising. The screen itself, let's get rid of all of those. The screen itself is a 1080 by 1920 5.5 inch LTPS IPS LCD. That gives you 403 pixels per inch and about a 70.1% screen to body ratio as far as how big the bezels are. Generally, I'd say the screen's quite good. The problem being it's not that bright. So let's see where my slider's quite high up. I've got adaptive brightness on. I can turn that if I really want to crank the brightness up. I can turn it up to brightness off, slide it right the way up. But even then, I only get to about 481 lux. Which is quite low down on my list of devices, you know, with the Samsung scoring close to 900. And most average screens kind of, I would say, around 600 or 700, so 481, that is quite low. And again, that's kind of where we're seeing this budget aspect, I suppose. But the colours and the clarity, I think generally, let's not get a video, let's try and find a... The colours and the clarity, you get a bit of a glimpse of a photo taken with the device as well. Why can't I zoom in? There we go. Colours and such, generally I think, look pretty good. A lot of debate about colours on screens at the moment, obviously, how saturated you want it, but I think generally the screen, it looks alright. It's just a little dim. It's all covered with Corning Gorilla Glass 3, which is quite old. I think they're on to the version 5 now. So again, we're paying £170 for this device. You're not going to have everything that's the newest tech. Software, there's not actually a lot to say about the software because it's just stock Android, which is fantastic. Really like it. It helps, I think, although it's slightly jittery, it helps with the fluidity. I think a skinned version might possibly struggle. There were only 2 pre-installed apps. It was one about feedback and one about the Mi remote, because it has got, I didn't mention, so it's got an IR blaster at the very top. Oh, and I can use the fingerprint sensor to, you see that? To bring the notification shade up and down. It's part of stock Android. So yeah, software, I mean, there's not a great deal more to say. If we move on to the camera, so the rear facing camera is 12 megapixel, well, it's got 2 obviously, as you can see, f2.2, they're both 12 megapixel, one with sort of what is called double, it's the zoomed version basically. It can record 2160p at 30 frames per second, or it can do 720p at 120 frames per second, so that's not too bad. The front snapper is only 5 megapixels, 1080p video. You know, I think that's sufficient. I think the photos generally, they look quite good for a budget device. Quite often this is where you will find budget devices lacking. This is where they make the compromise. But I think Xiaomi have managed to get a reasonably good camera in there. The colours look quite good. The clarity generally was pretty good. There weren't many photos I had to delete and try again. Generally, it did a pretty good job with that. Video is an interesting one. So there's no optical image stabilization. There's no image stabilization of any kind, and you really can see that. Even when you're filming, it feels like you're quite steady, and then you watch the video back and it looks like you're driving down a cobbled lane filming. Which, yeah, coming from a Pixel, that was quite obvious, the lack of image stabilization. And also, there's a bit of an issue with the mic, which apparently is a Xiaomi thing, but when these loud surroundings, it kind of goes all, I don't know, like digital and warbly and almost sounds like it's underwater. I'm going to play you a clip now where I tested just talking at the phone, and then I start the bike up to increase the sort of ambient volume, and you'll see what happens. So here's a quick test of the audio. Volume around me quite low. Now obviously I've increased the volume somewhat. Just wanted to see if there really is an issue. So that's clearly, it's a little bit of an issue, because even in outdoors with cars driving by, it was triggering this weird whatever it was. The front-facing camera generally seemed alright. I mean, not great, it was okay, sufficient, but definitely not fantastic. If I move on to the battery, so it's a non-removable Li-ion 3080 mAh battery. It scored 89% on my test, which is kind of, that's not too bad, it's mid-table, it's reasonable. But actually I think with Android 7.1.2, I think it's got really good downtime battery usage. And I would get to the end of most days with at least 60%. Well, let's say most days over 50, but it wasn't uncommon. I'd be looking at 64% or something like that at the end of the day. I mean, I'm not a heavy user, actually. You might think that I would be, but I generally have a screen on time of about an hour, if even that. But yesterday, we were at Comic-Con, as you'll see from some of the photos and videos, perhaps, you've taken with the Mi A1. And I'd finished there, and I was still at about 64 or 65, I think, and that's taking a few photos, filming bits and pieces and some text messages, and you know, for me that's quite high usage, and it dealt with it. It wasn't a problem. So battery, yep, pretty good. Hackability, so I had a look around on the XDA forums. Seems to be reasonably active, the Xiaomi Mi A1 portion of it. There's not a huge amount in the actual development area, but there is a couple of custom recoveries. There's also a guide to route not even needing a custom recovery, and that's quite handy. And one of the threads caught my eye, to enable on-screen navigation buttons and to turn off, and yeah, just turn off the ones at the bottom of the phone, which I thought, actually, if this was my everyday device, I'd probably do that. You need to have root to be able to do it, but as I said, root doesn't look to be too hard, and I'd quite like that, just to have the on-screen instead. Kind of weird. I don't think I'd have thought that a year or two back. So, in conclusion, I think if you're looking for a device under £200, you've got to consider the Xiaomi Mi A1. It really is a very good device for the price that you're paying. Possibly, if photos and video are important to you, you may want to look at the Moto G series instead and get whatever the most recent one of those is. Maybe, but even then I'm not too sure. It's been a while since I had, I think it was the G5. Something to consider. Otherwise, I think the Mi A1 definitely. I love the stock Android. I don't know why Xiaomi don't do more stock Android devices. If they did a Mi Mix 2 that was stock Android, I'd be all over that. I think that'd be fantastic. But then the downside being, it's kind of, it is import only. Even if you're buying from an eBayer, they're going to import it. So if you have problems, you might have to be sending it back, or they might have to be sending it back to China, or kind of that kind of thing. And those are your options as well. So you can buy off eBay. You could pay sort of £220 to an eBay seller that's based in the UK that's already imported them. Or you can go kind of, I won't say direct to the source, but you can buy from China and have it shipped yourself. And you're looking at about £170. You're probably going to pay a bit of import tax. I paid £11 and a bit. Don't forget there's Quidco. If you haven't signed up to Quidco, I should do a video about Quidco actually. Do get signed up to Quidco, because that gets you about £7 back as well. So in the end, it cost me about £170 for this device. So all in all, really very good phone. Really very good phone. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But for now, my name's Andy. I'll catch you all again soon.